Hello, dear listeners. Once again, as with the last episode, this is a bit of a heads up that normally you can listen to our episodes in any order and it's fine, and it doesn't really matter for what's going on, either with the things that we discuss in the episode or the little interstitial bits with our narrator, Dee. But in this case, this episode really functions as a companion piece to our Christmas Carol episode. So before you listen to this one, if you haven't listened to the Christmas Carol episode yet, do make sure that you listen to that one, or at least read the DM's Guild write-up, since that has the D-bits for that written in there. And, ultimately, it does make sense that this is a companion piece to our Christmas Carol episode, because at the end of the day, it's about a large man with facial hair who comes from the north, delivering toys to children. Enjoy! The Wonderful World of Darklords. The Peddler's Tales. Shan Yu. Dear Binks, I doubt you will ever see this letter, for I have nowhere to send it, save perhaps Santa Cecilia to join the other tributes to the beloved dead. But it helps me to pretend that I am writing this to you rather than to myself, for my time serving my patron has ensured that I find it easier to sort through my thoughts in the form of letters and journals. Besides that, well, my recent experiences have proven that you meant it when you said that you would always be with me. Perhaps even now you were sitting on my lap, watching as I write these words. Before I departed Londinium, I made a detour to Portobello Road to resupply and to search for any genuine magic items amidst the dross. As I shouldered through the bustling crowd, I heard a raised voice shouting about money. Someone lamenting his losses to a pickpocket or confidence man, I assumed at first, until I heard a voice that I recognized.
I'm sorry, sir, but that item is not for sale.
I started, for it was the peddler I had encountered at this very market a year ago, no longer affecting his ridiculous drawl. The peddler? Refusing a sale? The raised voice boomed again. 10,000 denarii then. 20,000. Name your price. I pushed through the crowd and saw a muscular man towering over the peddler in his stall. Although I have yet to visit there personally, I knew from descriptions that he was wearing clothing common to Agrabah. The peddler was covering a small object with his hands and beginning to sweep it from the table. The Agrabanian reached for the peddler's arm, and I could see that he intended to take the item by force. I assumed my form of dread. The gentleman said it was not for sale. The Agrabanian turned to me with a snarl, then looked back to the peddler. Don't think this is over, little man, he spat. My master is not known for his patience. With that, he bowled his way back into the crowd.
Thank you, madam. What a relief to see a friendly face. I am a man of commerce, not of war.
I raised a hand to cut off the peddler, half suspecting that the Agrabanian had been a confederate meant to inveigle me into yet another sales pitch. No need for your patter, peddler. What do you have to sell me this time? I pointed at the item the peddler had been hiding from the Agrabanian, a simple doll made of white horsehair. Could it be that the doll really is for sale? Just for me, your favorite customer, perhaps? I didn't expect his reaction. For once, he had no response, no quick path to a sales pitch.
No. This doll is not for sale. But you know me well. Well enough, I hope, to do me a favor. Take it. No charge, no provisos, no quid pro quo. All I ask is that you listen to my tale, as you have before. I did not purchase this doll. It found me, as violence found its owner, and as violence was about to find me, before you intervened. The doll's tale is a tragic one, for a single young girl and for her nation. But perhaps, together, we can keep this tale from repeating itself.
Welcome to Wonderful World of Darklords. I'm Tom.
I'm Rachel.
Okay, hold on.
Ow! Lucy in the fucking football here.
He was going to come in on time this time, listeners.
Yes,
he said
we talked about it.
We believed him, and that's on us. That's
Okay.
on us. So who is holding the football over there?
So, I'm Kris, and here's the thing. First of all, you didn't take the full 10 seconds at the beginning, which is...
Oh, we usually do
usually do
5.
five, yeah.
Okay.
You do 5. Okay, so that's... I wasn't prepared for that reason.
All right,
Secondly,
that's fair.
when you counted us down, you said 3, 2, 1, go, not record, which makes it seem like a race. So now here I am, like, anxious about, like...
Well, you lost.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm f***ed now. This is... I'm gonna have to retire. I was marring my record. And also, there was, I mean, conventionally, it's, it's like easing into a bath, right? It's like you start the podcast recording, and then, it's like you take a minute, it's like, okay, all right, we're ready to go. We're taking our 10 seconds. And instead, it's just like, bam, right into the script.
Well, okay, so that's 2 F-bombs I'm going to have to bleep out already,
3.
but that's 3? Okay,
3.
so, but that's okay, because we're talking about Shan Yu, so this is going to get a little bit
aging
raunchier.
up, yeah.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Listeners, my thoughts on Shan Yu are, we'll get into them.
Matter of AO3 public record.
Not quite, but they should be.
And we're discussing how to compare Disney movies to Ravenloft Domains of Dread. Except sometimes we can't. And when that happens, we have the Peddler's Tales. Today's story, Shan Yu.
Who my thoughts on are a matter of public record.
Happy holidays! Blessed Yule to everyone in this season of celebration of giving. We want to do our traditional December bonus episode, our special gift to you. And the stars perfectly aligned for us to give a gift of a bonus episode that we have been wanting to do for a long time. And that is our Peddler's Tales about Shan Yu.
And yes, it is a Christmas miracle. We mentioned in our Bald Mountain episode, which could not be a Peddler's Tales episode because Kris, the perpetually late introduced
Tortoise to our hairs.
has started up his podcast again, Mega Dumbcast. And our gain as listeners is our loss as creators because a daily podcast is taking up all his time. But here he is, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely. If there's been a late episode lately, it's the Kohler's fault. I'll make sure to put it in the episode description when it comes out.
So thank you very much for tearing yourself away from the harsh mistress of Mega Dumbcast to join us.
No, I'm very happy to be here.
Speaking of joining us, if you are new to kind of the Peddler's Tales series, because we haven't been able to do one in a bit, this is a series where we get to talk about Disney characters, Disney villains, Disney movies that we can't make work in our Darklord domain Ravenloft format. But we still can come up with a gameable version in our sort of world of Disney Ravenloft. So the first thing we like to do in the Peddler's Tales is explain why we didn't do a domain. It's not from lack of love, because, dear listener, we wanted to do Shan Yu as a Darklord so bad.
So bad. Oh, he's so great.
We dug into the deleted scenes and the making of material. I watched the weird 90s Disney Channel Cyber Club episode about Mulan for hoping for making of stuff. We watched the live action remake, for heaven's sake.
We were not fans of the live action remake.
But we could not make Shan Yu work as a Darklord. And Rachel, do you want to talk a bit about why we could not make Shan Yu work as a Darklord?
Yeah, there are a couple of reasons that Shan Yu couldn't work, because as we say in our regular episodes, there are 4 qualities that make a great Darklord. The act of ultimate darkness, which, he slaughtered that entire village. That's a great act of ultimate darkness.
Yeah.
But that's right there. The torment, or they got what they wanted, they lost what they had. We could do something with that. Like, he definitely does want to conquer China. We could do something with a torment, but there's not a whole lot there, and it's like, that would be kind of like a perpetually wanting to conquer thing. It would get very, like, Wile E. Coyote.
Yeah, a little Saturday morning cartoon.
Yeah. The element of tragedy and relatability, he definitely does not have.
Yeah.
And then the big
This
thing
is the biggie.
was the domain reflecting the Darklord. That we've got our setting of China, and China doesn't reflect Shan Yu, and that Shan Yu is held up as this invader.
Right,
that
yeah.
He's not kind of the axis mundi of the domain. Everything's not kind of spiraling around him the way that we see it with some of our other Darklords, with like a Clue or Davy Jones.
And it's not even, he's not like the political sovereign, because we've had some Darklords like that. There are Darklords like that are, you could have a like Darklord that's like a bandit chief, but that the China as a setting in Mulan, to be anything like what we see in Mulan, has no connection to Shan Yu.
Yeah.
Like no a thematic connection, no aesthetic connection. Like that's sort of the whole point that he has. He is this like interloper.
I was going to say, I would go even beyond saying like he has no connection. I think that he is connected to the setting specifically as an outside threat. Like it's a contrast. So you really would lose that. Like if the metaphysical reality is that your China domain reflects Shan Yu, you lose the whole theme of like the invader at the gates.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
And thinking about we don't get Saturday morning cartoons just pop into my head. We don't want to make Shan Yu Cobra Commander. We don't want you to be like every week he tries to take over China. That like technically that could be a torment, but that's deeply silly.
That's so bad. Yeah.
So what we are imagining with Shan Yu is that we're doing most of the Mulan story, like straight through, like the movie, but in the amazing battle avalanche scene, like he actually dies. Like he just like in the movie, he wants to invade, he wants to prove his strength, he wants to prove he's the strongest and greatest warrior. He has this obsession, like I can capture the emperor, I can conquer the empire, I can prove I'm the strongest, force the emperor to bow to him. But then when he gets buried in the avalanche, his army and everything, he actually dies. So, because you just have that amazing them like tearing themselves out of the snow.
That's a very clawing your way out of your own grave image. Yeah.
Like it was the tiniest step sideways to be like, oh, this was like them actually resurrecting like a revenant. And that is kind of what we're imagining is the base stat block is basically he's a revenant.
Yeah.
Which for people that don't know D&D so well, it's the Crow from The Crow.
The good one.
The good one.
Also the bad one, but we're pretending that doesn't exist.
But this predates the
yes.
the Juggalo Crow. And so he rose up, and his sort of force of his vengeance and his hatred also resurrected his lieutenants and part of his army, and they kind of rode into the mists, and now they exist as this sort of floating reality bubble, like they just roam from domain to domain to domain in Ravenloft, pillaging and conquering. And they have this, like, idea that there's the Emperor, that somewhere out there's the Emperor, and they're trying to find the Emperor, they're trying to capture the Emperor, make the Emperor bow to him, and, like, they probably couldn't even say much about who the Emperor is.
Yeah, they don't even remember.
Yeah, it's just this abstract idea that there's this victory, there's this person, and if they can defeat this person, they will have completed their mission and kind of be able to rest. But they're just going from place to place to place, burning and pillaging, and so they still have that element of torment, right? This is kind of how we do the torment without being Cobra Commander. That, like, they're never going to find this specific sort of sovereign they're trying to overthrow, and they are going to just roam from domain to domain to domain, burning and pillaging for all eternity.
I have a question about that. So the idea that they are seeking this emperor and they couldn't maybe really identify who it is at this point. Do you see that at, like, what is the level of, like, Shan Yu's intellect, at least in this degree? Is it like, I'm imagining on the one hand you could have, like, kind of a more of like a shambling revenant who has this, like, vague idea, vague recollection of life, or you could have a Shan Yu who is more, at this point, seeking an abstraction and sort of, like, has this, like, spiritual desire that is, like, it's not that it doesn't understand reality, it's that, like, the emperor has become, it's like an Ahab kind of a thing, where it's like this is turned into, like, a larger quest.
I think definitely you need to have Shan Yu's intellect, because that's part of what makes him such an interesting and compelling villain.
Yes.
You know, you've got the whole reason, it's taking the doll to his men and having them, like, evaluate what they see and everything, and the fact that he's so sharp is a big part of what makes Shan Yu. But I could see it being kind of an Ahab thing, where it's kind of the idea of the Emperor. I could see it being a, like, that he does remember the specific Emperor and he believes that he's out there somewhere, but if you question him on specifics, he would just kind of get really angry and kill you because he doesn't want to admit that he doesn't remember.
My big kind of thing that I'm thinking about this in the context of something we've done and that's been done with actual, like, canon domains, and it's this sort of time being really fuzzy. And, like, if you have domains where they're sort of in a time loop, or what did we just did? We just did one of these. I'm trying to remember which one. Where, like, nobody's sure how long it's been.
I don't remember.
Okay, yeah. So we've done a couple of these, and I know there's some canon ones, as I said. And it's like you'll have domains where it is sort of, okay, we know we've been here, and we don't know how long it's been. Maybe with Pirates of the Caribbean, the idea is like, oh, there's a king.
Right,
like somewhere over the ocean, there's a king.
Or like with Frollo being the viceroy.
Exactly,
and like, the war's been going on for...
Like the wars.
A while. Certainly not 50 years.
Yes, and that gives you all that sort of narrative flexibility of, you could say, no, this domain has been around for 50 years, Frollo's been the viceroy for 50 years, but the people don't have like a clear sense of 50 years having gone by. They're just like, oh yeah, he's been the viceroy for a while. A couple years now. Mm-hmm. And so I imagine like that of, he has this emperor and he does think it's sort of a specific person, but like kind of what Rachel was saying, if you pressed him on the specifics, he would just kind of get mad and try and stab you. Because he's not consciously aware that his brain is fuzzy, and it would make him really upset to sort of poke those memories and those specifics and see how fuzzy they are.
Yeah.
That's right, come here. This is a great thing. Like, you could do whatever you want as a DM. Like,
yeah.
If you prefer just pure, like, Incredible Hulk zombie army Shan Yu, like, that could be a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. But that is how I would.
Yeah. To me, it feels like, I think Rachel's right. The intellect is very important.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
I think, like, I can imagine, because I think the initial circumstances of, like, how and why he decides to go and pursue this invasion, those aren't as important. And so if it were a situation where, like, he's going to take this place that is like a place of legend to him in a sense, like he knows something about it, but it's like, it is this great place that has this great emperor, then I can imagine that kind of like shifting over time and this becoming at a certain point almost transcending into this like fable. It's like he started out going to a real place for a concrete person, and at a certain point it becomes El Dorado. At a certain point it becomes like he's questing for the Grail, where it's like somewhere is the Emperor, and when we find him, then we're gonna,
Oh man,
that's cool,
you could even have it get to the point where like he kind of knows this is like a religious thing, and it's like, no, the Emperor is a symbol.
It's in my heart.
It's the Emperor of my heart.
The real capital we pillaged was the friends we made along the way.
Or maybe even like an idea of like he's starting to believe that the Emperor is a symbol, but he's like keeping the idea of a real Emperor alive for his men. Like that could be another interesting thing to do with him.
Yeah.
And the great thing is, as a DM, you can pick whatever is most narratively interesting to you.
Yeah. And like, I mean, to me at least, there's something there with like the way that Darklords work, where like, because I love Shan Yu being highly intelligent, I would love him sort of like, after all this time, beginning to intuit, like, there's always an emperor. And like, what, I don't know what that means, but like, there's always that person who is like in charge and like represents,
very interesting.
And that even if his memory's not super clear about it, and he hasn't like defined his terms or anything, that like he would recognize that like, if I go into Barovia, like, okay, Strahd is the emperor.
Yeah, and every domain he goes into, like the Darklord is the Emperor, but then if he even manages to get there, it's not quite right. It's not the right one.
That's a Emperor, not the Emperor. But yeah, this is even like almost the Emperor as like tarot archetype of just like the concept of a sovereign. Yeah, there's some interesting stuff there. We've mentioned a couple of times that it's kind of a slept upon thing with a lot of the Ravenloft canon, that you have the sort of mini Darklords and mini bosses. And you have like the Dark Powers don't just mess with Darklords, they mess with everybody.
They mess with everybody.
And it absolutely fits the metaphysics and like the MO of the Dark Powers, that they would be like, we're just going to enjoy tormenting this guy. There's not like a full-on Darklord here, but it's going to be fun to just kind of always dangle the carrot in front of him, and then always dangle the football in front of him, and then snatch it away at the last minute.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I talked about when we were sort of like prepping for this was, if I were running this, then maybe my sense of the metaphysics, which like whether the player characters ever know about this or whether the players ever care about it, but like my sense would be, you can't make him a Darklord because what he wants is conquest. And so like ultimately he would be satisfied by being even a Darklord. And so instead the Dark Powers turn him into essentially a rogue Darklord, a wandering Darklord without a domain, who can never quite take the throne.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm just spinning now at the
Lie, baby.
Yeah, no, just the whole idea of like the Darklords being the Emperor, and I'm thinking of that there are some Darklords who would like do anything to save their own skins. It would be like, yeah, I'll totally budge Shan Yu if that means he's gonna go away and leave me alone. But like, clearly any Darklord who does that is not the true Emperor. So even if he succeeds in getting one of them to bow to him, that's not an actual success. So it's like a whole like no true Scotsman thing going
no
on.
true Emperor.
Of any Emperor he can get to bow to him is not the true Emperor.
That's good stuff. And the nice thing with thinking about the dark powers being responsible for this is you kind of have a nice, like, double, two birds with one stone kind of deal. Of you have the torment of Shan Yu, but then you also have Shan Yu as a source of torment to those Darklords. Like, that's the great thing, is they're getting double the angst.
Yes.
That delicious, delicious angst.
Yes.
Do you, Rachel, want to talk about this sort of, speaking of Ravenloft metaphysics, like how we're kind of imagining Shan Yu existing in the Ravenloft metaphysics?
So basically, we're kind of imagining it similar to the things we've talked about with reality wrinkles in the past. If you listen to our Home on the Range episode of all things, we talked about this also more recently on our Bald Mountain episode.
And less crazily.
Yes. You can see how Chernobog does it much more than you can see how the Little Patch of Heaven does it. But normally it's the idea that, like, fiends or other outsiders kind of drag this little mini domain with them, but there are other beings that can do that also, and we're kind of seeing Shan Yu as doing that, not even because, again, he's not a Darklord qua Darklord, because he's too mobile for it, but kind of just show sort of the kind of the aura that he has, and the malice and the power and the evil that he radiates, that he has this sort of area surrounding him that the Darklords, when he enters their domains, they can feel him, they can sense that he's like this cancer going into their domain. And
critically, he can push through closed borders.
Yes.
Which that's gonna really bug. That's gonna give a Darklord a real bad day.
It's gonna give him a real bad day.
If somebody pushed through their closed borders.
So our idea is, he'll have his like reality bubble around him, he'll push through the closed borders, and then he just rampages through the domain, causing destruction, reuniting little girls with their dolls.
So good.
Yeah. Like, partly searching for China / the Emperor, and partly just fulfilling his thirst for conquest and making sure that everyone knows that he's there and everyone knows his name, because we know that's important to Shan Yu. Just being as flashy about it as possible, until he's either defeated or gets bored, and then he rides back into the mist. And this is live, baby. The listeners already know this because it'll have been covered in the Peddler fiction, but when we were talking about this whole, Shan Yu going and ravaging things, Kris, you mentioned wanting to do the doll as the magic item, because originally Tom was thinking about
like the falconing glove. I'm still going to write it up, because I had stats and everything. But the doll's way better.
So why don't you talk about the doll a little bit?
Yeah, well, okay, so the listener knows all about the fiction. We don't yet. So I don't know where this is going to land, but basically the idea is
time paradox.
That the doll is the remnant of this conquest of a place that no longer exists. It's one of the domains that's gone away, probably because of Shan Yu. And so this thing is left, and attached to it is a ghost, maybe multiple ghosts, depending on how it all works out, but probably a ghost that needs to be put to rest. And more importantly, wherever that ghost goes after it is put to rest, presumably, is where the souls of those who died in this conquest would be, because they're not accessible by any of the usual magic, because this place never existed. And so basically what you have is this one artifact of this tremendous atrocity, this tremendous human loss, with one ghost attached to it who remembers. And that is the only link to this huge consequential event that is essentially erased from history. And so the doll represents like the memento of that. It also represents the single chance, the single link. Like, if this ghost is put to rest, then like maybe whatever it has heard or done since will be taken back to those people who exist in like whatever limbo is for the souls of those who were never born.
This is so cool.
I
love this. Thank you for suggesting the doll.
Yes.
And this is also something that is really doable with the specific Ravenloft metaphysics.
Yes.
Because it's like, if it's a domain that kind of collapsed and got erased, it's like not only is this place destroyed, it never existed. Like in the sort of the world, like the rest of, quote unquote, the world doesn't remember. Everything ever connected with them has been erased and rewritten. It was destroyed, and it was destroyed in a way impossible in like the Forgotten Realms, not like a wish spell.
Yeah.
It basically was like a wish spell to erase it from existence.
Yeah.
I want to take a moment to talk about the duality of Rachel, because Rachel, you were just petting your cat, and I couldn't see the cat, and I thought you were making a very dramatic and expansive hand gesture about the metaphysics of Ravenloft. Equally plausible.
Not an implausible conclusion.
Yep.
That's just trying to stop Coraline from getting all on our podcast.
Yeah, Coraline is the one who's rampaging through. She's Shan Yu.
She's our Shan Yu. Shan Yu of our household.
So Kris came up with this, like, wonderful, poignant, evocative idea, which, of course, to me immediately was a puzzle box.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, what domain is this? It's got to be a specific domain. We can't just say some domain. So
What gazetteer is it in?
The boys here can verify. Like, we were
we
talking
were
about this, and I, like, dove over to my bookshelf to look something up.
Started doing furious research and muttering to herself.
I did, yes. So, and I was worried because 5e did do something with this domain, but it's still something that I could work with. I didn't realize that they'd done something with it because it wasn't in the Vendrick's Guide to Ravenloft.
Dear listener, you might remember, if you're on our Patreon, the Strixhaven episode, and we talked about how I find it a little silly that the book needs to give you permission to have free will. And Rachel said, you are seen, I validate you and love you. And I just want this to hold this up as evidence. She wasn't being condescending.
No.
That wasn't a bit.
And if you're on our Discord, then you got to follow this in real time.
Yes, this entire saga. How can I make it work with the canon?
So, we needed a domain that was destroyed, but it's also going to have, like, some kind of resonance. It's not just, like, rando domain. And Kris, you pointed out it has to be, like, a domain where war is a theme. That would, like, really kind of add to the poignancy of this domain. So, this doll was owned by a little girl in Tovag, which was the domain of Cass the Betrayer, who is Vecna's arch nemesis. So, well, he thinks of himself as Vecna's arch nemesis. Vecna thinks of him as annoying guy.
Those listeners of ours who've seen Stranger Things Season 4, he was mentioned by Eddie in that opening game.
Oh, was he?
Yes,
cool.
yes.
Yeah.
Or not by Eddie, by Mike, because Eddie reveals it's Vecna, and Mike says, but Cass killed him!
So, Vecna was a Darklord in 2nd edition, and Cass was pulled in, and they were basically each other's torment. And then in 2nd edition, Vecna escaped. If you're not doing anything with Vecna Eve of Ruin and you're leaving things there, then you could just say, okay, Vecna escaped. And the Dark Powers said, well, he's the one we actually cared about. We don't care about this clown. And so they sent Shan Yu in to do mop-up. And all of these poor, innocent people living in Tovag.
Tovagians.
Yeah, just got killed because the Dark Powers were bored with their rock. If you're doing Vecna Eve of Ruin, then they had the whole thing where Cass got pulled out of Tovag and the Dark Power said, okay, you need to go get Vecna for us because he's the one we care about. And if you don't, then we're sending you back to Tovag. And it is really very much the Dark Power style to be like, and while you're gone, we are going to completely scourge it with Shan Yu and kill everyone there so that if you fail us, they're going back to a big giant pile of slag with no one in it. And so once again, everyone in Tovag gets killed because the Dark Powers are mad at the tyrant who has made their lives hell for their entire existence.
And this is neat, like, not just because I'm glad you made it. I'm happy that you're happy, honey.
Thank you, darling.
That you made it work with the canon.
And it made it work in a way that, like, people have heard of. This isn't like Ferosnikov. Like, it's like, oh, Vecna, yay!
But, like, the nice thing is, if it means you could use this plot device of the doll and this conflict with Shan Yu to then springboard into a wider story. Because, like, that could be your into a big, like, Vecna-centric story. Could be starting with Shan Yu and this doll and dealing with that. But this doll has this connection to Tovag. So from there, that could seg you in a whole campaign, like, get you hooked in with all of the, like, Vecna. I haven't read Vecna Eve of Ruin, but I know the premise is, like, basically a thing happens that gets you psychically connected with Vecna, and that's why, like, Elminster and all of them are like, you guys, you handle it. You need to be the ones to fight Vecna, not us. Not me, Elminster. But this could be that. Like, you could take that prologue they have. I think you're, like, fighting cultists of Vecna's, and their cult thing explodes. And
something like that. I was flipping through it looking for every reference to cast into Dark Powers, and Grey Aries helpful on our Discord helpfully screen capped every reference to the Dark Powers. So that's all I've read of Vecna, everyone.
But yeah, I believe the opening is like you're fighting cultists of Vecna, and their cult thing explodes, and that gives like a psychic connection to Vecna. But like this could be that. Like this could be the thing that gives you the psychic connection with Vecna is you do
doll.
something with this doll.
Yeah. This feels like the man. That's a weird analogy. As the word epee is to crossword puzzles, this MacGuffin is to Ravenloft, because like you're gonna get like this gives you an ability to first of all do an epilogue to any domain that doesn't exist anymore. It allows you to connect to a place that canonically doesn't exist. So like it's a link where like you can get a clue from or interact with an NPC from a place that is gone, and it gives you, like with Shan Yu, it gives you an ability to like do something really dramatic and transformative with a place you've already passed through and don't have any further use for. So like I can imagine there probably are a lot of domains that Rachel could list alphabetically that are like, you throw them out there and then it's like, okay, we did the thing here. We're done. Like we had a great time there, but we're not going back. That would be to be able to bring them back as like, and then this place was ravaged by Shan Yu. Then you've got this doll, which is like all of that. Like it's great for Vecna. I think it would be equally great for anything that is of specific importance to your own campaign.
Yeah.
And speaking of Shan Yu, so if we can seg back into the sort of character stuff, just to make sure we keep under our sort of... our goal is to have these not be too long.
I forgot about the timer completely.
And that's always a dangerous proposition when we're talking to Kris. But this is amazing. This is good stuff. That's the problem. It's good stuff. Too much good stuff. So we're imagining what we mentioned as a Revenant as his base stats. And the nice thing is you can do the sort of classic D&D bad guy hierarchical undead. So you can have like the general is a revenant, and then all his lieutenants are like wights, and then like skeletons for the minions, for just the random giant hill full of Huns riding down on their horses. Those can all be like skeletal Huns on skeletal horses charging down. And that's awesome. And we are also imagining that he's got the Falcon, of course, because like you have to have the Falcon. It's so cool. Oh, yeah. And just that it's like basically familiar, but with a much higher range. This is what I'm going to do with the Falcon and Glub, was you basically got a Falcon familiar, but instead of being able, it's like the range is like a certain number of miles you can see through its eyes, and it was like that times 100.
Right.
It's like hundreds of miles you can see through the Falcon's eyes.
Because they were originally going to have that in the movie, the idea that Shan Yu could see through the Falcon's eyes, and then they decided to do less with Shan Yu and more with Mulan, which was the correct decision. But that is part of why Shan Yu is not a Darklord, is because they did less with him. So. Speaking
of, we totally should post a link in the show notes.
Yes.
It's a deleted scene where they do the seeing through the Falcon's eyes. It's really cool.
It is really cool.
And you will be hearing about it again.
Yes, because there's a quote there. There's
a quote there. Shan Yu has dialogue, which is not something you could say for most of the movie Mulan.
Yeah.
And speaking of Shan Yu's dialogue, the last thing we do for sort of the character write-up is those quotes for the Van Ritten's Guide to Ravenloft style, their role-playing trait, ideal, bond, and flaw. I have prepared some quotes, if I may. I would like to point out, this is not going to be easy for us, because I went to a script online and did like a Control F for Shan Yu. And
as is your wont.
As is your wont. And there was 44 instances of Shan Yu total. But then it was which ones are Shan Yu, dialogue, and which ones are like, Your Majesty, Shan Yu is with them. Or like people talking about Shan Yu. And so I didn't do like a super close count. This was a casual thing. And I count Shan Yu as having 15 lines in this whole movie.
Better than Big Hero 6, right?
Yes, better than Big Hero 6. That was like 11. It was like 11 lines in the whole movie. This is 15.
Okay.
So that's good. And we get an extra one because we have this line from the deleted scene, so we can make it like 16 or 17.
Yes. Okay, cool. Callahan still holds the record.
Still holds the record, yes. Ugh, that was a job of work.
Thank you, honey. Thank you for that job of work.
All right, so some of these are just Shan Yu-isms. I don't know if they'll work. So like, bow to me, then you will bow in pieces. Like, it's maybe something for a role-playing trait. Or, like, it does have the demand for submission and violence.
That actually, I could see that as the flaw, because up until then, he's so awesome, but then you're seeing him completely losing his mind.
That is kind of a good, like, a point. Like, that is the moment in the movie where he starts to sort of spiral. So, interesting.
Yeah. It's a possibility.
That's the moment where he loses control, is basically when he has a temper tantrum. So
you took away my victory!
That's great.
I think we're gonna make this work. By building his wall, he challenged my strength. Well, I'm here to play his game. Go, tell your emperor to send his strongest armies. I'm ready.
That sounds like an ideal.
That does sound very much like an ideal.
Mm-hmm.
I just, gosh, he's so good. Miguel Ferrer, I think it is so good. Like, I absolutely love, he has this scene, it's kind of what you expect, but then the way he says, I'm ready.
Oh, yeah.
Just, I'm ready. Like an actual, like, sort of moment of genuine emotion. It's not a brag. It's not a shout or a war cry.
That's the one place where we get kind of that element of relatability, is the way that he says it. And I'm not gonna get too much into this, but the way that he says it, I feel like there were earlier drafts where he was mirroring Mulan more, because that's kind of like, it feels like there's a genuine desire to prove himself, and he's like really excited at the idea of proving himself.
Unfortunately, this is too context-derived, but I had to have it. How many men does it take to deliver a message?
I don't know. I feel like enough people know.
Yeah, like, if you're listening to this, you can finish the quote, and you know the answer, then you know the answer to that question. That's a possibility. These are all good.
They're all good.
Okay, all right. No, the quickest way to the Emperor is through that pass. Besides, the little girl will be missing her doll. We should return it to her. That might be a good, trait.
I was thinking that, too.
Because that even is this is how you'll be role-playing him if he interacts with the PCs. You'll be having the ferocity and the directness and the quickest way to the Emperor is through the pass. I'm doing the full frontal attack and the cruelty.
Yeah.
And the just really unnecessarily cruelty and horribleness.
Yeah.
And then...
I think you typed ideal and meant trait.
I did do that thing that you said.
Yeah, Chris, feel free to interrupt.
Yes.
We're so used to doing... I think it's been over a year since we've recorded one of these.
Yeah, so...
So, please jump in at any time.
I think that'd be a great bond.
We're used to it being just us.
Look, I mean, we can... This is one of those little sliding puzzles.
Yeah,
There's 15 lines. I mean, it's fine. We don't need to spend 30 minutes shuffling these around.
And then finally, this is from the deleted scene. And in the least, set it up.
You need to give the context.
Yes, yeah. just click on the link in the show notes. It's they're pillaging the village. And might be the village we see burned later, but they're pillaging a village. And one of Pillage Village. One of the Hun soldiers finds a little bird in a cage and kind of hides it. And then the Falcon sees this, and we see the Falcon's eyes glow, and we see Shan Yu's eyes glow. So this is the whole, it's one of the big points of this scene is to tell us he has this power. And he goes to the guy, and he says something like, I gave orders that every living thing in the village be killed. And he pulls out the cage, and the guy looks very nervous. And then he says something like, here's the quote. It seems you found a little friend. All creatures should be given a chance to live free. And opens the cage and lets the bird fly. But freedom has its price, and the weak will pay. And the hawk swoops in and kills the bird, and he kills the guy. So free all this is the closest thing we have to a statement of principle.
Yeah.
All creatures should be given a chance to live free, but freedom has its price and the weak will pay.
That's honestly a very good chaotic evil credo.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and to your point earlier, Rachel, I think that and I'm sure we'll talk about this later, but there's a way to do this where Shan Yu mirrors Mulan a lot. And I can imagine having a similar dynamic with the player character, and that's a great ideal if you're going to connect Shan Yu as a mirror to a player character, because then you have a player character who is presumably from a place similar to Mulan where that freedom is in question. And so that allows you to have another take on the concept of freedom and the price of that freedom for the player character. So I would definitely opt for that one if your key player character who you're using as Shan Yu as a foil to them is a Mulan type.
Yeah.
What about if we're looking at this as an ideal? What if the one about the send his strongest armies, I'm ready, What about that as a bond?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking the whole problem is the bond has to be with conquest.
The conquest and the emperor, that does both.
Yeah, okay, cool. This was, if you're okay with these, Kris.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I am fine with it. It's good.
Cool. So that is our write-up of Shan Yu, the character, how he exists on the write-up, how he exists in the Ravenloft metaphysics. But let's talk about, as Kris brought up, how your PCs are going to interact with him, what kind of adventures you can get from this NPC we've created.
The peddler's tale was chilling enough, but all the more unnerving for the way he spoke furtively, holding the doll close to him, wary of those who might overhear. I assured him that the Agrabanian was gone, but it did little to put him at ease.
I appreciate your help with the Agrabanian, though if I know his master, he won't be dissuaded for long. But he's not the first to try to part me from this doll. Since I've found it, I've been beset by pushy would-be buyers, yes, but also thieves and soldiers and bandits of all descriptions. It seems that Shan Yu has inspired terror and curiosity in the highest halls of power, judging by the lofty personages who have sent their agents to acquire this simple doll. The truth is, I would have given it up long ago, but I thought of how little such powerful people would care for the fate of one girl, or even one village. I held out hope that in the next city I'd find a pair of trustworthy hands to bear the doll and its owner onto a better fate. And here you are.
I held the little doll in my hand. Perhaps it was my imagination, but I thought I could sense the aura of sadness and loss that surrounded it. The little girl who would never be remembered or at peace. Although others were seeking it, I did not believe it was the object of my patron's quest. Its link to Shan Yu was so strong that if Yensid's, Aslan's, purpose were for me to find it, he would have sent me to domains ravaged by the warlord, or perhaps to inventory the dying domains of Clor. And yet, while the doll was not the primary object of his interest, I knew that he would find it fascinating.
So, where I think all agreed, like, Shan Yu is mainly going to be there as an antagonist. And it's going to be that here is this threat that the PCs have to deal with. And it could be, the great thing is you have the setup almost even kind of like Mulan, where the PCs are doing their normal PC stuff, and then they find burned villages, or they see refugees, or they hear about this, like, terrible raid, or they just get the idea that there is this, like, warlord burning and pillaging in the region. And that's how you can then set up that conflict with Shan Yu. So I think one way or another, this is going to be some kind of, like, physical battle. This is going to be...
Yes.
This is not like a Cruella de Vil where you could maybe defeat her with social gossip and stuff. This is like, no, this is going to be a fight. You're going to roll initiative.
Yeah, this is a nice break from some of the Darklords that we've done lately have been a bit more intellectual.
Yeah.
And Shan Yu is not one of those.
No, you're going to have a boss fight.
Yeah, and I mean, I would make the distinction there too. Like, I think you're going to have a boss fight for sure, but like, you know, you've got your sort of intellectual or social villains. You've also got your, like, physical villains who, like, this is just, like, the big giant or ogre or whatever. To me, this isn't even a different category of, like, an existential villain, where it's like, you know, as you're hearing these rumors, it's not like we're going to get beat up or we're going to get killed. It's like something from out of the context of this domain is going to, like, wipe out what we're familiar with. And I think, like, the ability to make this a threat that scares or at least touches a Darklord does so much to convey that, okay, whatever we've dealt with here before in this place, now this is something different. This is something come from the outside that, like, the biggest fish we're aware of can't stop. And seeding that early with rumors, with, like, distant atrocities, that tells you, like, I mean, I feel like, yes, that ends in a fight, probably, but most of the mileage you get out of that at the table is not the battle. It's what do we do in this situation where there is something coming that is, like, the existential threat.
That is a really fantastic point. And the idea of Shan Yu, like, almost as a cosmic horror threat. That, like, because I was thinking about, in Van Richten's Guide to Ghosts, one of the examples that they give for, like, what hunting a ghost looks like is this, like, ghostly mercenary band where...
Convenient.
Yeah. It was like this ghostly mercenary band who got, like, captured and tortured to death, and so now they're, like, roving around, like, capturing people and torturing them. And there's a lot of overlap there with Shan Yu, but at the end of the day, it's just a ghost story. They're ghosts. They fit into the pattern of other ghosts. You find the thing that, like, reminds them of their life, and you, like, go, woo! At them with them. And,
Pocket watch.
Yeah, and you put them to rest or kill them or whatever. And Shan Yu is on a completely different level from that. Like, you're not going to have Darklords running scared from this mercenary ghost army.
And this connects with something we did with Chernobog, which is, I always love when we can find the sort of, you have to team up with the Darklord.
Yes.
That, like, Strahd doesn't like you don't like Strahd, but we don't want all the people in Barovia to be murdered and all of the villages to be burnt to the ground. So Strahd's like, I hate that I need to, like, team up with you. But even the being something from outside of the Darklord's power is this whole, the Darklord might say, I need to bring in these other outsiders. Like, or even like, oh, you've proven yourselves to be these worthy opponents, so I'm going to tag you in on this. I'm going to ask for your help because this is so big. Yeah. And this is such a, like, threat beyond my normal tool set to deal with. And I always love a good G.I. Joe and Cobra have to team up to fight drugs type story. In terms of plots, there's so many here. You could have, you could do your get recruited either by, like, the Darklord as Darklord or even by just, like, the Sovereign to sort of scout out and find it. So you have to kind of do the following the trail of destruction. You could do a really cool thing where your home base village is the equivalent of the Tung-Shao Pass. So you get, maybe even like Shan Yu sends a messenger to say, like, in 3 days I'm going to come and burn this village to the ground. Because anything that lets you set up a 7 Samurai plot is a good Dungeons and Dragons story. We're going to be like, okay, we have, like, 3 days to, like, build the defenses and set traps and train the villagers and, like, prepare our stuff. And if we can just hold them off even, like, we're sending for reinforcements, then we just need to hold them off till the reinforcements get here. And so that story writes itself right there. That session writes itself right there.
Yeah. One great thing here is that you can do a juxtaposition of plots if you're going to have, like, a long build up to, like, when you're finally going to deal with Shan Yu in a decisive way, where sometimes it's fun to do the plot where, like, you can't fight it, you just have to get out. It's like, you know, the battle at Hoth or whatever. That would be a great thing to do as well, where it's like, we can't win, but we're gonna, like, evacuate, or we're gonna, like, whatever.
Yeah, that could be really good. Yeah. Doing a Battle of Hoth kind of thing.
That is cool.
Just once again to sort of hold him while we evacuate the village. That's really cool. And this is, like, Shan Yu as a sort of team-up thing. It actually does fit some of the thematic stuff with Mulan. Because this was, like, an issue we both had with the live-action remake, which we mentioned when we were brainstorming. That, like, this is a society that's very much, like, rejecting and oppressing Mulan. And it's like, why is she fighting for China? And that's less of a thing in the animated movie because you have, like, the doll in the village. Yeah. You have the, like, no, he is going to kill everyone. He is going to burn the imperial city to the ground.
Yeah, like, China has its problems, but every man, woman, and child in China does not deserve to die for those problems.
And that you didn't have as really that in the live action one. So there was much more. But wait, why is Mulan everyone's being a jerk to Mulan? Why is she helping them? Or it's like, no, everyone's being a jerk to her, but everyone in the world will die if she doesn't stop Shan Yu. And so this could even be a nice, like, yes, Strahd is horrible to be a Barovian peasant, but you're mostly alive. And that's better than all of Barovia being slaughtered down to ashes and the earth salted.
And I mean, I like both sides of that. I think that, like, having that clarity because of, like, the larger threat coming in helps you to, as you say, like, team up with the Darklord, interact with your setting in a way you haven't before. But also, I like the possibility of it being like a situation where you decide, even if you're not ultimately going to side with Shan Yu, that there's, like, you can't really stand behind the place that you're supposed to be defending. And there could even be, like, not to step on the husband angle at all. I'm leaving that for you, Rachel. But, like, I can imagine, like, a player character romance even with Shan Yu, even if sort of like a kind of tenuous one, where it's like, these are two characters who really understand each other. They're mirrors to each other, with the ideal of, like, you know, there's a price to freedom. What if you are strong and free? And that is your kind of your gimmick as a player character. There's a real attachment there. And Shan Yu would not necessarily want to destroy you, or having not destroyed you would then be like, yeah, it's good that didn't work. I'm glad this person is alive.
Oh, I'm going to talk about that more in a minute.
Yeah, that creates a great dynamic where, and kind of like a classic like dark romance situation where like the lead is the male lead here is someone who's like, he is evil. He's being bad to other people, but he has this special connection to you. And maybe there's even a chance to like leverage that to help people in some way. So yeah, I think whether he's useful both as the villain who makes it perfectly clear you need to team up with Strahd, or as the villain who allows you to like side with him against Strahd.
Yeah.
Very true. I mean, now that you mention it, like, yeah, the chaotic, evil, but very intelligent and charismatic villain is a great thirst trap for your chaotic good play, your chaotic good PCs. You're like, well, we all love freedom.
If we ever meet a player like that who wants to play a character like that, I think that would be a fantastic idea.
But yeah, it reminds me of, Kris, the only time I have ever allowed anyone to play a chaotic evil PC in any game I've ever run was when we did an arc in Falkovnia, and you were playing a chaotic evil character to be sort of like the foil for the lawfully evil setting. And that this was like the only situation in which I could imagine, Tom's very nice neutral good PC teaming up with a chaotic evil person was in Sassafras and Falkovnia.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we kind of like had a version of this with the you know what, this chaotic evil guy's chaotic evil, but I'm in a lawful evil setting. So like, enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of deal.
Yeah. That I love that for Shan Yu. And I think like the breaking down of like a lawful environment, like you're missing a trick if you're not using him there.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're not sending Shan Yu into Falkovnia,
yes, burn it down, Shan Yu. See, real time, me, Tom. I'm like, yes, I'm signing Shan Yu. And speaking of sending into Falkovnia, this is also a great way to do a kind of cross-domain story, to really have stakes. Like if you have a domain that's kind of your home domain, so like a lot of your stuff is in Barovia, or PCs are from Barovia, you could have they have some mission in Haslan, and Shan Yu's there and does all this destruction, and then they're like, okay, he's on the way to Barovia. So like, we have to go back now and prepare for that. We're the ones maybe bringing it back to Strahd and being like, this guy is gonna
bring back the message.
Yeah, this guy is gonna is gonna burn everything down. So rather than the Dark Lord approach them, this could set up a story where they actually are sort of the ones saying, we hate you, but you're not as bad as Shan Yu. So we propose an alliance.
Yeah.
So on the script after this, it just says, thing Rachel thought of. Surprise!
Yes.
In all caps. That's in all caps why I said it like that. And an exclamation point.
So this came up when we were talking about the Emperor and who the Emperor is and what's the role of the Emperor. And it was actually, Kris, before you mentioned the idea that the Darklord could be the Emperor, but that segues beautifully into this, which is one possibility you could do is you could plant in the PC's heads, whether or not you want this to be true, that if they helped Shan Yu to actually defeat a Darklord, like they might be able to defeat that Darklord for good and knock out two birds with one stone. This idea that like it's extremely hard to permanently take down a Darklord, and in fact in 5e they explicitly say that it's impossible, but in the older editions you could. And if you were able to permanently take down a Darklord with Shan Yu's help, then maybe you take out that Darklord and Shan Yu and the Hun army get put to rest. Maybe you take down that Darklord and Shan Yu becomes the new Darklord. But either way, there might be a possibility of a game there. Or we were just getting into this whole thing with the idea of setting up Vecna as a big bad and like going into Eve of Ruin. Who is more the Emperor than Vecna? So you could actually have, like, if you did do that idea of starting off with Tovag and Shan Yu destroying Tovag is the beginning of your Eve of Ruin game, then having Shan Yu running around as a spoiler as you're trying to take Vecna down could be a really fun thing to do.
Yeah. Jeez, I love that. I think that's a fantastic idea. And like such a rare opportunity, such a rare, like, it gives you another stage to the story of like, okay, first we got to run from Shan Yu. Then ultimately we have to make a stand against Shan Yu. Then ultimately we've discovered that there could be a way to take down one of these completely kind of immortal, intractable foes, and that's to go enlist Shan Yu and like join with him and take down a domain.
So good, huh?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So yeah, with that daunting and dramatic possibility, we have given you our thoughts on Shan Yu as a PC, as a person in Ravenloft metaphysics, about all the different story possibilities of Shan Yu. Rachel,
But what about Shan Yu?
what about Shan Yu
as your evil husband?
after dark?
I have to give my spiel here because I know that I have teased it a couple times when, Kris, you've talked about hard choices, and I've had to lament how dirty you did my husbando on there, because if it were marry instead of party with, he would be number one, and it wouldn't even be close. And as party with, he's in the top 5. Because okay, here's my pitch.
Those eyebrows.
Yeah, okay, yeah, the eyebrows, the voice. Enough said. He's got, the huge physicality, but also the panther-like grace. So, once again, for the party with, that's all great. And there's that moment where, Mulan is running from him, and he, jumps up on the roof, and he, sees her, and he's panting with exertion, and then he grins, kind of mid-pant. And if you don't want to party with that, I don't know what to tell you. But for evil husband material, and this is where this is actually useful, not just Rachel being high-key thirsty instead of low-key thirsty, because this is some great stuff for mirroring your chaotic good PC in a game. Because Shan Yu, first off, he's one of the only Disney villains who we never see bullying and berating and pushing around his subordinates because he can.
Yes, yes.
Those
he's a good boss.
Yeah, he's a good boss. Those Hun lieutenants of his, he's polite to them, he's respectful to them, he clearly does command their respect, but he doesn't, he's not the way Jafar is with Iago, he's not the way,
Gaston is
with anyone.
Or anyone.
Dr. Facilier is with Lawrence, That's
a very good point.
Yeah. And then there's also when he finds out that Mulan is the one who is responsible for his defeat. When he finds out that she was a soldier from the mountain, there's never a moment of, but you're a woman! He does not care. He does not care that Mulan is a woman. She is the one who took away his victory. That doesn't throw him at all. And the idea that, that he hates her as a warrior, but also respects her as a warrior, and her gender does not take away from that, is just, there is something you can do there if you want to have Shan Yu as the, villainous love interest for your chaotic good PC.
It's
for me.
The villainous love interest of my chaotic good PC, who is me, Rachel Peddler. But this even ties into the stuff we were talking about with that deleted scene and the idea of sort of almost an ideology, a code, an ethos of the sort of egalitarianism of being nature red in tooth and claw, being no, nothing matters except how good of a warrior you are. And there is a pure equality in that of nothing matters about you except how good of a warrior you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, and there's so much room on the chaotic side. If the primary axis that you're going to do your story about is law versus chaos, then having a player character who is not chaotic evil, but is on the chaotic side with a chaotic evil husband or lover or whatever, who is an antagonist, there's so much room for play there. You can imagine Mulan, sparing the little bird. I feel like if she defended it, then he'd be up for it. That's okay, that's fair enough. That's not begging me to spare it. That's blocking whatever I'm doing.
Yeah.
That is the freedom has a price, but she paid the price.
Yeah, by fighting back. Oh, I love that. I love that so much.
Yeah. That I feel like there's a ton there, and it also, what's great about that is that you've got a third hand in that dynamic, which is the lawful evil who's able to kind of make the argument for, this is better than what he's bringing. This is better than chaos. This is better than ruin, which is great if you're ultimately going to side with the lawful evil character, and even better if you're going to ultimately side with the chaotic evil character and say, no, truly ruin is better than this. And I'm going to, we're going to destroy this domain, and then we're going to make out on top of it.
I want to write this fanfic right now.
And the great thing is, you as a DM can present both of those options and legitimately let your PCs choose.
Yeah,
Like, you do not have to put your thumb on the scale. Mm-hmm. You do not have to say one of these is objectively the correct choice. Like, no, this is an interesting enough, complex enough dilemma that, like, they can legitimately decide how this is going to go down.
Like, are they going to kind of choose one or the other, or are they going to figure out a clever way to get the two to kill each other? Like, yeah.
So, we have given you our thoughts on Shan Yu and all the wonderful storytelling potential that he has, and all the wonderful storytelling potential in Dungeons & Dragons or in AO3. And so, but yes, Kris, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for working on this project with us and sharing your wonderful thoughts. Thank you for the doll, right? That would it'd be a dumb falconing glove if you weren't here.
And again, thank you for, I know that I cannot even imagine having a daily podcast.
And making the time for us. We really appreciate it. And if people want to hear about your daily podcast or reach out to you with questions about it, like, how can people get more of your stuff?
So my podcast is Mega Dumbcast, which is a daily podcast about old role-playing games where I identify the dumbest thing on each and every page of an old role-playing game supplement or whatever. This season is all about Vampire the Masquerade, and I'm following a cast of characters through scenarios from the beginning of the production of that line with Alien Hunger all the way through the end with a Gehenna scenario yet to be identified. And yeah, you can find it at megadumbcast.podbean.com. You can find it at patreon.com/megadumbcast if you want to find all of the megasodes for easy binging of the past episodes of the show, as well as lots of bonus content. There have been many seasons of MDC before this. I was recently horrified to discover when I started the podcast. I've done Palladium Games, Ninjas and Super Spies, Heroes Unlimited, Beyond the Supernatural. I've done Secrets of Shadowloo, which is an obscure supplement for the likewise obscure Street Fighter role-playing game from White Wolf. I've done scenarios for the Marvel Superheroes role-playing game from TSR. So yeah, it's a daily podcast, and if you want to binge it, Patreon is the best way, but you can also jump on whenever. And yeah, I think that's all that I have to say about my podcast.
Our oldest plays Street Fighter, and I was talking to him about it, and I mentioned Ragonka as though it were a thing, and he looked at me as though I grew in his second head, because my main knowledge of Street Fighter is from Secrets of Shadowloo.
What a weird, end to that franchise. So if people have ideas for Shan Yu in gaming or ideas for Shan Yu in fanfic form, how can they share either with us, Rachel?
Please do.
Yes.
Well, you can email us at wonderfulworldofdarklords@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook, Tumblr, or Patreon at Wonderful World of Darklords. And on YouTube, I believe we're just Wonderful World of Darklord. But look for us, and you can find that amazing logo that Halite made for us. And yeah, our YouTube comments are very active. That's like than our Discord, that's the most hopping place. So yeah.
If you like how we took Shan Yu and adapted all these different story potentials, then I have a couple of horror movies and other movies, including some Disney stuff like Tron or Toy Story that I've adapted into 5e Adventures. We'll have a link in the show notes, and if you can just follow that and look for Tom Kohler on DM's Guild or more by this author. And we also have some resources for running spookier, Halloweenier games with younger players. You can also find that stuff on DM's Guild. And speaking of younger people in Halloween...
Speaking of younger people in Halloween, I have a picture book, Mother Ghost, Nursery Rhymes for Little Monsters. It's exactly what it sounds like, 13 classic nursery rhymes rewritten to be about Halloween. If you prefer kind of the idea of the AO3 sounding thing, I haven't written anything quite that spicy, but my stuff for older people you can find links to on my website, www.rachelkohler.com, where I have some short stories for adults. Oh, also, that Wonderful World of Darklords on Patreon, we're going to have a free for everyone, not just for patrons. You'll be able to find the stats on the doll there.
Until next time, thank you for listening. Thank you, Kris, for coming and joining us.
Thank you so much.
All right.
And happy gaming.
And that brings us to why I am writing to you and not to my patron banks. Perhaps when I was able to convince myself that he was someone other than who he is, I would have sent it into his hands, but now... Azalin Rex is no sadist to torture this child's spirit for the sheer pleasure of it. If he were, I would have left his employ long ago. But he will want to study this doll, and his studies will involve prolonged experimentation, and the little girl's comfort will not be a priority. And when he is finished, but he will never be finished. If he lets this child's spirit rest, the doll will be nothing more than a battered plaything, and he will lose a valuable resource. That is not the sort of man he is. Thankfully, the peddler was so moved by this spirit's plight that I was able to convince him to throw in a second item for free. A feather that unlocks the holder's latent supernatural abilities, last owned by a flying loxodon. I have sent this to my patron, along with an invoice for its cost. In the meantime, I have used the money that I supposedly spent, along with the favors owed to me by the parents of the children I rescued on my last visit to Londinium, to ensure that the doll is delivered to Mama Odie of Crescent City. It is with no small amount of hesitation that I am sending it to her. I never did meet her in person, and part of me is still certain that she must be a hag preying on those who trust her. However, while I have more reservations about Yensid than I was initially willing to admit, his words to me in our last correspondence were true. I have to stop believing that those of us who use magic are more prone to wickedness than anyone else. By all reports, Mama Odie is wise, selfless, and powerful, and if anyone knows how to help this child's spirit, it is she. I can continue my relationship with Yensid with a clear conscience. I can. This is the proof. Love, D. This has been The Wonderful World of Darklords. We have no affiliation with Disney or Wizards of the Coast. All music recordings used in this episode are in the public domain and were obtained through museopen.org. Titles and links are in the show notes. The Wonderful World of Darklords logo was designed by Haylight Jones. You can find links to their work in the show notes. If you'd like to support the show, look for us on patreon.com or find our tip jar on Red Circle. Thanks for listening.
If you're okay with these, Kris.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Kris, yeah. My name is not Kris.
Her is Rachel.
I'm used to being the only
Right,
one
yeah, I have
talking
to sign off on these.